"Can I sit here?" The one-legged girl's question that broke a single dad's heart. The question was small, almost fragile, yet it landed like a weight on his chest, heavy enough to steal his breath. In a crowded café filled with ordinary noise and ordinary lives, a single moment quietly cracked something open inside a man who thought his heart had already learned every possible way to break. He had survived loss, exhaustion, and the long nights of being both mother and father to a child who depended on him for everything. But nothing had prepared him for the way one simple question, asked without words, would force him to confront pain he had buried deep inside. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of human connection, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. These stories exist because empathy still matters. He was a single father in his mid-30s, carrying the kind of tiredness that sleep could never fully erase. His life had been reduced to routines built around survival, school drop-offs, work deadlines, grocery lists, and the constant worry of doing enough. His daughter, small and bright-eyed, sat beside him at the café table, her legs swinging slightly above the floor as she clutched a cup of warm milk with both hands. Moments like this were rare treats, pauses in a life that never seemed to slow down. He watched her carefully, as if memorizing her face, because somewhere deep inside he feared time would move too fast and take these moments with it. Across the room, she stood out in a way that made people look and then quickly look away. A young woman, barely in her 20s, with a calm but guarded expression. Her hair was pulled back neatly, and she balanced herself with practiced precision. One leg ended above the knee, replaced by the absence that spoke louder than any words ever could. Metal crutches supported her as if they were extensions of her body, tools she had learned to trust more than people. There was a strength in her posture, but also a quiet hesitation, the kind that came from years of being noticed for the wrong reasons. She scanned the café, searching for a place to rest. Tables were full, chairs pushed close together, and conversations flowed freely without anyone noticing her pause. The father saw her before he understood why his chest tightened. Something about her presence stirred a memory he had tried to keep locked away. He shifted slightly, adjusting his daughter on his lap, when their eyes briefly met. In that instant, he saw not confidence, but a silent question forming in her gaze. She took a step closer, careful and controlled, as if every movement had been rehearsed 1,000 times in her mind. The space between them felt suddenly fragile, charged with something unspoken. Her eyes moved to the empty chair across from him, then back to his face. The question existed without sound, but it echoed louder than any spoken words ever could. It was a question that carried years of rejection, awkward silences, and forced smiles. It was a question that asked not just for a seat, but for acceptance. The father felt his throat tighten. Years earlier, he had sat in a hospital room that smelled of disinfectant and despair, holding his wife's hand as machines hummed around them. He remembered the way hope had drained from her eyes, the way doctors spoke in careful tones, and the moment he realized he would be raising their daughter alone. Since then, he had built walls around his heart, convincing himself that feeling too deeply was dangerous. Yet in that café, those walls began to crumble. He saw his daughter look at the young woman with curiosity, not fear, not pity, but simple interest. Children, he had learned, often saw the world more clearly than adults ever could. She leaned slightly toward him, her small hand resting on his arm, as if sensing his hesitation. That gentle weight brought him back to the present. He inhaled slowly, forcing himself to breathe through the sudden rush of emotion. The young woman waited, her grip tightening slightly on the crutches. She was used to this pause, this moment where people decided whether she was an inconvenience or a human being. Her life had been shaped by an accident she never chose, a single moment that had rewritten her future. She had learned to be independent out of necessity, to move forward even when the world seemed built for everyone else. Still, there were days when the smallest interactions hurt the most. The father nodded, moving his chair just enough to create space. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a simple shift, but it felt monumental. Relief washed over her face, subtle but undeniable, like someone finally lowering a shield they'd been holding up for too long. She moved carefully, settling into the chair with practiced grace, her crutches resting neatly against the table. Time seemed to slow. The café noise faded into the background as something softer filled the space between them. The father watched as his daughter smiled at the young woman, a smile free of judgment, full of warmth. That smile struck him harder than anything else. He realized then how much his own child was learning from the world he showed her, from the choices he made when no one thought they mattered. As they sat there, the father found himself noticing small details. The faint scars on the young woman's hands, the way she held her shoulders steady, the quiet resilience in her eyes. He imagined the battles she must have fought, the stares she endured, the strength it took to simply exist in a world that often looked away. He felt ashamed of every time he had avoided discomfort, every time he had chosen silence over kindness. Memories surfaced uninvited. His wife had once told him that kindness wasn't about grand acts, but about showing up when it was easier not to. He had forgotten that somewhere along the way, buried under responsibility and grief. Sitting across from this young woman, he felt something shift. The pain he carried didn't disappear, but it softened, reshaped into something more meaningful. The young woman glanced at his daughter, her expression softening. For a moment, she looked younger, lighter, as if the weight she carried had eased just a little. The father noticed how his daughter leaned forward, fascinated, as children often are by difference without fear. He felt a swell of pride mixed with humility. This was the world he wanted his daughter to grow up in, one where compassion came naturally, not as an afterthought. They didn't need words. The connection formed in shared glances, in the simple act of occupying the same space without discomfort. It reminded the father that healing didn't always come from therapy sessions or self-help books. Sometimes, it came from being present in moments that mattered, even when you didn't realize they would. The café door opened and closed, people came and went, but something lingered at that table. The father felt lighter, as if a burden he hadn't known how to name had been acknowledged. He realized that his heart had broken not from sadness alone, but from recognition. He saw himself in her struggle, in the way life had forced her to adapt, to carry loss with quiet strength. As time passed, the young woman prepared to leave. She gathered her crutches, steady and composed. Before she moved away, she paused, her eyes meeting the father's once more. There was gratitude there, unspoken but powerful. Not gratitude for a chair, but for being seen. If this moment is touching something inside you, please take a second to comment below before the story ends. Your thoughts matter more than you know. The father watched her walk toward the door, each movement deliberate, each step a reminder of resilience. His daughter followed her with her eyes, then looked back at him, her expression thoughtful. In that look, he saw the future he hoped for her, one built on empathy, courage, and understanding. Later that evening, as he tucked his daughter into bed, the memory returned with surprising force. He realized that his heart hadn't just broken in that café, it had expanded. It had made room for compassion he didn't know he still had. He understood that being a single parent wasn't just about providing food and shelter, but about teaching his child how to see others, how to respond when faced with difference. Near the end of the day, alone in the quiet of his living room, he sat with his thoughts. The image of the young woman stayed with him, a symbol of strength and vulnerability intertwined. He promised himself that he would carry that moment forward, that he would choose kindness even when it felt uncomfortable, especially then. If this story touched your heart, if it made you pause and reflect, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in humanity, and leave a comment. Your engagement helps keep stories like this alive, reminding us all that sometimes, the smallest questions can change us forever.